What is something that you actually remember being new technology, but is now obsolete? Zip drives. In college we had to try to save all our massive Photoshop files to max 500 megabytes zip disks. T9 texting. I learned an entirely new way of relaying language and will never use it again. CD players. I remember how much better these things were. It was amazing. Put the tape in the tape player. Plug in the power to the cigarette lighter. Gently set the CD player on a folded towel or pile of shirts, and listen to the CD skip every time you hit the tiniest of bumps. TiVo. It was a big deal to be able to automatically record shows, and an even bigger deal to be able to skip commercials. Now, we just watch it on demand. Dial-up internet. I loved being able to do Mad Libs, chat with people on IRC or Yahoo, get Mortal Kombat fatalities, and print off naked pictures from Playboy that took me 20 minutes to download lol. I was so amazed. I remember when GPS devices came out, that was huge. No more printing out directions, the little machine will direct you. Pretty much immediately the same exact thing was added to smartphones. I bet my dad still has his GPS in his glove box dusty as all hell. My dad was super excited the first time he brought a digital camera home for us to play with. It was a brick that took 8 photos and saved them onto a floppy disk. It even came with a floppy disk carry case so you didn't have to worry about losing them. I specifically remember sitting on the living room floor with my brother playing Ocarina of Time on the N64 and saying to each other, "Man, graphics can't get better than this." I hadn't even realized the decline of CDs until I bought a laptop with no CD-ROM. So much. One that rings a bell is I remember watching a tech show about a new thing that had just been invented and was said to be indestructible replacement for tapes. Called the CD. Cordless phones. When they first dropped it was the newest thing imaginable. Flash forward a few years and no one even has a house phone. VCRs. I remember when they cost close to $1,000 CDN and were the greatest thing ever. Infrared to send files from one phone to another. Who else remembers the entire camcorder, camera, DSLR section in Best Buy? Dedicated MP3 players. Going from a Walkman to a Discman to an MP3 player was huge. I can have all my albums on this one device. These days people look at me funny for not just using my phone. But the iPod Classic is still the best music device I've ever found. Custom ringtones. It used to be such a huge industry back in the day and people would actually pay money for shitty 8-bit versions of songs to play when people called them. Now most people I know just keep their phones on vibrate or silent and use default ringtones. Digital photo frames. Everyone seemed to have one for about 3 weeks and now I haven't seen one in about 10 years. Zip drives. Game Boy Color Sci. Telephone cards. The word processor. Like a typewriter with a tiny bit of memory so you could make corrections before it printed the type. Before that it was either strike through or white out. Sort of. Actually I used a computer at school before I ever saw a word processor, but not even my rich friends had one at home. Short-lived because home computers started becoming more common and affordable. Kind of a step back in a way because dot matrix printers looked like crap compared to something typed on a word processor. Typewriters. I was so proud to get my first portable. I was going to write a novel. I actually did a course as a teen to learn to use the new electric typewriters. If anyone ever needs to replace a typewriter ribbon, I'm qualified. Netscape Navigator. Not really a piece of tech, but hey. Caller ID boxes. I used to think we were so fancy since we had the little box with the screen that showed name and number before anyone else we knew had one. Phone cards. You'd buy a phone card so that you could use it in a payphone and never have to worry about having change. They converted half the phone boxes to take them, which must have been a major infrastructure operation. This must have been the 1980s, I think. Now completely forgotten. Thinking Columbia House CDs were a good deal. Macromedia Flash. When I was in 2nd grade, a kid on my bus was showing off a sheet of paper with movies listed on it. His parents had just gotten a VCR, and him and his brother were being allowed to get one movie each because they were over $100 per tape. Video stores weren't even a thing for another year or two. DVDs. I remember everyone moving from VHS to DVD, and my broke ass was delighted because I could score all these cool movies on the cheap for my perfectly functional VCR. Floppy disk. The curly CFL light bulbs. Mini disc. At some point in the late 90s, Best Buy had a Black Friday sale on writable DVDs. I bought 200. I have about 150 of them left. Web TV. An internet box that connected to the phone line and the TV. Internet access without a full-on computer. I remember when I was a kid, the rich neighbor down the street installed a satellite dish. Fuck basic cable. He needed a gigantic frisbee on his roof so that he could access dozens of independent TV channels. My dad says handheld calculators. I was surprised by his answer. I feel like they would have been around much longer than from the childhood of someone that's now in their 50s. Those 20-pound phone books delivered every year to your doorstep. They actually had a lot of useful information about local government and community events. Basic Wi-Fi. It was fucking black magic, man. Internet without wires. I could literally check my email. Anywhere on the house. Kitchen table? I got mail. Living room? I got mail. Bathroom? I got mail. Porch? Mail motherfucker. This service might technically still exist, but I think it counts. Ringback tones. I was working in the industry when they came out, and I was working in it when I heard one for the last time, too. Moon boots were supposed to be amazing. Tricked me into exercise for a weekend. Never touched them again. Kind of the opposite. I remember making telephone calls without needing the area code, US. And, also, having to memorize phone numbers. In the year 2000, I was sitting on a plane as people boarded, watching an episode of Seinfeld on my compact iPad. https://imager.com/am69nvx closing parenthesis color handheld computer containing an IBM 1 GB microdrive. https://imager.com/309jway9 closing parenthesis. I had recorded the show off my new TiVo DVR and encoded the output to MPEG, saving it to my impressive 1 GB microdrive, which was actually a small rotating platter in the format of a flashcard. It was pretty radical stuff for the time, and the businessman that sat next to me shook his head in amazement. I could tell he was thinking, these kids these days, watching TV on a device in their hand. Of course, now that technology is an antique. I remember when my mom got a PDA for her nursing school in maybe 2004. Everybody thought it was the coolest shit, but as I look back on it now, I don't think it was terribly useful lol. Flip phones. I remember when the Motorola Razr was cutting edge. Both 8 tracks and cassette tapes. I remember getting up early to watch the first space shuttle launch back in 1981. Winamp really whipped the llama's ass. For people not old enough to remember, CDs were the biggest holy shit this is awesome technological shift I've ever experienced. From the sound quality, and skipping songs, to CD-ROM revolutionizing computer gaming. Act. I still think they sound better than streaming, and iPod, S and such. You munchkins aren't going anywhere near far enough back. I remember my school getting its very first Xerox machine when I was in 3rd grade, early 70s. It printed in faded, speckled, skippy blue ink. It went fast enough that by the end of a given week each teacher, approximately 15 of them, could produce 1 page of printed text for each of their 15 students. The pages had to be laid separately until they sufficiently dried. Modern printers and toners have long replaced those machines. But, man oh man, was that some big stuff back then. I can still remember the teachers huddled together, giddily comparing their amazing results. I'll never forget getting a Sony Walkman for Christmas. It was amazing to be able to take music everywhere with me. I may be dating myself here. I am from a small town in South Georgia. I can remember when you could dial 4 digits to call anyone in town on a rotary phone. We got our first push-button phone when I was about 6 or 7. To call anyone one town over, You had to dial 7 digits and it was long distance. They charged you extra for that back then. When I was 10 or 11 we got our first VCR. Dad debated over that for a month trying to choose between that and the Betamax. Look it up kid, it was a thing. I had an 8-track cassette player with a cassette for Dolly Parton, Alabama, Queen, and a couple hers I don't remember. I got my first cassette deck when I was 12 or 13. I played Pong first on an international games machine and it was the only thing it would play. I got my first Atari 2600 when it came out and I collected a bunch of games for it. I could kill in Pac-Man. Carried the house high score until everyone else stopped playing. Joust is still one of the most entertaining fighting games in the world. And don't get me started on Yar's Revenge. I had the original D&D Red box set, and knew a guy who had a signed copy of Chainmail, and if you don't understand the relevance of that, I hope you roll ones until you at least give a nod of homage to Gigax. And watch out for gazebos. Actually my dad's first, computer was a Tandy 1000 from Radio Shack. There was no hard drive. It had 256 kilobytes of memory and loaded software from 5 1/4 floppy disks. DOS had to be loaded from floppy. I can remember the birth of cable. I can remember New Coke and the disaster it turned out to be. I could go on but man, there's so much that's obsolete now that was amazing before. If it has taught me anything it's the impermanence of things, and their importance on my life, rather the lessons learned and experiences obtained that have lasted the duration. I don't always have to have the biggest and best or the newest and most shiny anymore. Thank God I grew out of that. Guess I'll stop rambling now. Y'all have a blessed evening. The Atari 5200 and Laserdiscs. MP3 players, specifically the Zune. CD players especially in cars. I thought the best thing ever would be to have a CD changer in my car. Now my car doesn't even have a CD player. I was a very small child when Beta switched to VHs. I remember watching Jem and the Holograms on Betamax. I'm so lucky to have been born in the early 80s. I got to see the invention and progress of so many things. Also, cassette tapes, Walkmans and Discmans. Kids today will never play Oregon Trail on a green and black screen or have to hear the annoying dial-up of trying to get your AOL to connect. My grandparents also had a car phone when they first came out. These things seem so corny now but they were a big deal back in the day. Oh, and not really technology but something that I remember that is now obsolete as cursive handwriting. And using paper and textbooks in school. Not completely obsolete but as the school systems become more technology-based they will be eventually. My beloved Commodore 64. Windows Phone. I remember getting a Nintendo, NES, in the late 80s. It's hard to explain how amazing it was to have that at home. Now we can use emulators and download all of the games onto a small hard drive, but the act of changing the games and the way they looked and felt. All of that was really great. Anti-skip CD players. When I was a kid my dad spared no expense by getting a state-of-the-art cordless phone in the house. I felt like I was living a life of royalty when I could walk almost all the way to the street while still being able to talk on the phone. I remember when the Nokia 3650, their first integrated camera phone, was introduced at Singular Wireless. So, two things, really. Ask Jeeves. Answering machines. Like the old style with mini cassette tapes. The flip video camera. A pocket camcorder. In the college entrepreneurship class 1 taught we discussed why it was so successful. Portable discrete video camera. And what might displace it. Laserdisc. Gigantic album-sized CDs, really. How about knowing almost very little coding and you could build a website on GeoCities? That was pretty big deal. The amazing ultra-realistic graphics of GTA San Andreas. I remember Windows 7 being the latest and greatest OS. Took me forever to want to jump off Windows XP to it. Renting out DVDs. Garmin and TomTom. Shit was mind-blowing when it came out, as long as you paid for the updates anyway. Disposable film cameras. There is a show called Beyond 2000 from the 80s and 90s that would do segments on technology of the future. Lots of stuff they showed never went anywhere. but I distinctly remember disposable cameras being talked about. Then a few years later they were everywhere, and sometime in the last 10 they've mostly disappeared. Was at a wedding a few years back and they put one camera on each table for the guests to shoot with. All were collected, developed and scanned, then put up online for everyone to see. Really fantastic idea. Now everyone takes their own photos at events like that and there's not a unified way to share them with everyone in quite the same way. I'd love to see a digital camera version of the per-table units. Having something shared and physical at an event like a wedding is so much better. Oh my, I am 62. Fax machines, word processors, pagers, home answering machines, cable TV, VHS, beta, CD players and discs, 8 tracks, 85% efficiency furnaces, 4-barrel carburetors, fuel-injected 2-stroke outboard engines, variable cylinder engines, frozen orange juice, Tang, electric typewriter. I could go on. Flip phones. Not exactly tech, but interactive encyclopedias on CDs. I remember being amazed as a kid. So much information. Sound clips, music, images, even videos and easy search. Now you just have all of that and so much more on Wiki. Dial-up internet. I wasn't allowed on until after 8 p.m. because it would block the phone line. Calculator watches. The first cell phones. Oh god, I am that old. Lol. Palm pilots. Thanks for watching. See you later.